Last Saturday morning, I woke up to the sound of birds outside the window and a gentle breeze drifting through the open blinds. I stretched in bed, thinking of how excited I was for the day ahead. My son, David, had planned a small family gathering at his house to celebrate his daughter's 7th birthday. It was going to be a simple weekend barbecue with a few close friends, cake, and lots of laughter. I had offered to bring my famous potato salad and a homemade chocolate cake, and David insisted that I relax and let him handle the rest. I had been looking forward to watching my grandchildren play in the yard, hearing their giggles and seeing their faces light up as they tore into presents. Little did I know that by the time the afternoon rolled around, the day would be anything but celebratory. As I dressed in comfortable jeans and a light sweater, I thought about how blessed I was. My son had grown up to be a kind and responsible man, and his wife Amanda seemed perfect for him when they first got married. She was sweet, organized, and always eager to please. Over the years, our relationship had had its ups and downs, but I never doubted that their marriage was built on mutual respect and love. We had shared countless holiday dinners, birthday parties, and family vacations. I supposed every family had its share of disagreements, but nothing had prepared me for what was about to unfold. I arrived at their house around 11:15, wrapping the cake in a protective bag and carrying the potato salad in a cooler. The smell of sizzling burgers and hot dogs greeted me as I walked up to the back door, and I could hear the laughter of my grandchildren playing tag near the swing set. Through the kitchen window, I saw David and a couple of his friends flipping burgers on the grill. Amanda was inside, bustling around the kitchen and setting up plates on the counter. She looked up, sensed my presence, and gave me a warm smile as I walked in. "Mom, thanks for bringing these," she said, accepting the food from me. "I just put the potato salad in the fridge, and I'll slice the cake closer to cake time." I nodded and glanced around. The living room was tidy. Balloons in pastel colors floated above the couch, and a stack of presents sat on the coffee table. My granddaughter Lily knelt on the rug surrounded by ribbons and wrapping paper, carefully examining her new doll. My younger grandson, Noah, who was 3, toddled around clutching a toy truck. Everything looked perfect. I gave Amanda a quick hug and headed outside to catch up with David. He looked up and smiled broadly. "Mom, you made it," he said, wrapping me in a hug before letting me go to place the cake on the patio table. "The weather is beautiful, isn't it? I hope you don't mind that I got a portable speaker for some music. Thought it would liven things up." I laughed and shook my head. "Not at all. Just try not to blast anything too loud. You know your father's sleeping upstairs." David's smile faltered a little. His father, my ex-husband, had come down with a bad case of the flu and was resting in the guest room. The tension between David and his father had been palpable ever since the divorce, but I had insisted on Dad's presence for Lily's birthday. I hoped they would bury the hatchet, at least for a day. But as I soon learned, family history has a way of rearing its head unexpectedly. A few guests arrived, neighbors and friends from the local neighborhood. My cousin stopped by, and my sister helped me serve the food. Everyone chatted about their week and complimented Amanda on the decorations. I felt proud watching my son and his wife hosting, and I smiled as I overheard them trading jokes about who would win a competitive game of cornhole. By noon 30, most of the guests were settled, kids were running around, and the grill was working overtime. I decided to help myself to a burger and sat down at one of the picnic tables, greeting friends and catching up. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. Suddenly, I heard raised voices coming from the kitchen. At first, I thought maybe someone had spilled something or an appliance had malfunctioned. But as I listened more closely, it sounded like an argument. I put my plate down and rose to investigate. When I stepped inside, I saw Amanda pacing near the counter, her hands trembling. David stood a few feet away with his arms crossed, his face flushed. Their voices grew louder as I approached. "Why did you do that without asking me?" Amanda's voice quivered, equal parts anger and hurt. "I didn't think you needed my permission," David snapped back. "It's my house, too." They both stopped when they saw me standing there. Lily peeked around the corner, her small face curious and a little frightened. I felt a pang in my heart at the sudden shift from laughter to tension. What's going on? I asked softly, trying to keep my voice calm. Amanda turned her back to me and took a deep breath before facing us. Just a misunderstanding, Mom, she said tersely. Nothing you need to worry about. David's jaw tightened. Everything's fine, Mom, it's just between us. I gave them both a long look, hoping this was something minor. They were usually so good at resolving their differences. I walked back outside, trying not to let my worries show. I picked up my burger and sat down, but I couldn't focus on eating. My mind spun with possibilities. Maybe it was something to do with finances, or a disagreement over the guest list, or a clash about parenting. Whatever it was, it clearly rattled them. I decided to give them a few minutes and headed over to join my sister and cousins near the kiddie pool, where the little kids were splashing in the water. The grown-ups chatted about everyday things, and I tried to concentrate on their stories. But I kept glancing toward the kitchen, worried about the strain I'd seen. After a while, the kids got bored of the pool and headed back to the yard to chase one another. I excused myself again and walked inside. David and Amanda were both in the hallway, their faces still tight with frustration. As I stepped closer, I heard Amanda mutter something under her breath. I strained to catch her words. "Why don't you just disappear?" she said, her voice low but filled with hurt. It was directed at David, but I felt a chill as though it were aimed at me, too. Then David's response came out sharp and cold. "Fine," he said. "I wish you would." They turned as one to face me, their expressions a confusing blend of anger and regret. My heart pounded as I tried to process what I'd walked into. This was no longer a minor spat. I took a slow breath and said, "Let's all calm down. We can talk about whatever this is without raising our voices." Amanda's eyes shimmered with tears. She brushed a lock of hair behind her ear and said, "I'm sorry, Mom, I've been under so much pressure lately, I feel like nobody listens to me." Her voice cracked, and she looked away, wiping her cheeks on the back of her hand. I stepped closer to her and gently laid my hand on her arm. "Sweetheart, I know you've been juggling a lot. Work, the kids, managing the house. It's a lot, but that's no excuse to say hurtful things." She nodded but kept looking at the floor. David's posture softened just a bit. He ran a hand through his hair. "Look, Mom, I'm sorry for snapping back. I was stuck in a deadline at work, and then I got home and found that you had changed the whole guest list without telling me." Amanda's eyes widened. "I didn't change the guest list. I just invited a few more people from my book club. I thought it would be fun for everyone to meet." David's face fell. "You didn't think to check with me first. We planned this together." I sighed, trying to diffuse the tension. "I think you both need to sit down and talk this through like grown-ups. This is Lily's birthday. We should be celebrating, not fighting." David bristled. "Okay, Mom, if that's what you want." He led Amanda to the living room and sat her on the couch. I remained in the hallway, listening as they began to speak in hushed tones. I wandered back outside to rejoin our friends, but the heavy cloud of their argument lingered in my mind. I tried to focus on the children playing a game of tag, but my heart wasn't in it. 15 minutes later, I heard footsteps behind me. David approached, looking sheepish. "Mom, can you come back inside? We could use your help." I blinked rapidly, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Of course," I said, following him back into the house. The moment I stepped into the kitchen, I sensed the air crackle with residual tension. Amanda was standing near the sink, her arms crossed, her face still red. "I told him I didn't want my book club friends showing up uninvited," she said, arms still wrapped around herself. "He thinks I'm overreacting, but I'm tired of feeling sidelined in my own family." David leaned against the counter, looking deflated. "I just wanted a small gathering, you know? I didn't want it to turn into a big thing." I took a deep breath. "You both have valid points. Amanda, if you wanted more people there, you could have said so. David, if you wanted to keep it small, you should have made that clear. But fighting and yelling at each other isn't helpful. We need to find a compromise." Amanda's shoulders slumped. She looked at David, then back at me. "I guess you're right." David reached out and gently took her hand. They exchanged a glance that said more than words. I watched them and felt a flicker of hope that we could move on from this minor clash. I began pulling a few folding chairs from the garage and setting them in the living room, thinking we could have everyone move inside for cake and gifts while things cooled down. As I carried in the chairs, I felt the floor shift beneath me. A sudden loud crash came from the hallway. I spun around to see Amanda's favorite decorative vase shattered across the floor, water and flowers strewn in every direction. She looked down at the mess and gasped, then sank to her knees, tears spilling freely. David knelt beside her, his hand on her back, but his expression was guarded. I felt a knot form in my stomach. This was no longer about a party. It had become something deeper. "Amanda," I began softly, moving toward her. She looked up, her eyes swollen. "I'm so stupid," she sobbed. "I just wanted everything to be perfect, and now look at this." She pointed at the broken vase. "You don't even care about my things." I knelt beside her and gently lifted her chin. "Honey, it's just a vase, we can replace it. No material thing is worth your peace of mind." David reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to make you cry." She shook her head. I hate feeling like I don't belong here sometimes, like no matter what I do, I'm doing it wrong." David's voice cracked. "You do belong. You're my wife. I love you. I'm sorry I didn't communicate better. I was stressed." They both turned to me. "Mom, you have to help us figure this out," David said, sounding more like a child than the grown man he was. I patted Amanda's hand and said, "We'll figure it out together. Let's start by cleaning up this mess, then we'll take a deep breath and talk quietly." I stood up and gestured for David to help gather the broken pieces in the trash bag I grabbed from the kitchen. As I wiped the water from the floor, I hoped that this was the worst of it, that after putting the vase away they would calm down and enjoy the rest of the afternoon. I reminded myself that families argue sometimes and tempers flare. I thought back to the day David was born, and how we had celebrated that tiny moment as though the world itself had paused to welcome a new life. I had always believed that love could conquer any disagreement, and I held tightly to that belief now. When the immediate chaos of shattered glass and spilled petals was resolved, I fetched fresh towels and helped mop the floor. Then I offered to take Amanda into the kitchen to get her something to drink. David stayed behind in the living room to gather up a few stray toys and reset the chairs for guests. I led Amanda to the counter, poured her a glass of iced tea, and handed it to her. She clutched the glass with both hands, staring at the condensation as though it were a lifeline. She took a small sip and looked up at me. "I hate that I yelled at him like that." I shook my head. "You were frustrated. Marriage is hard sometimes, but maybe next time you can tell him how you feel before it escalates." She let out a shaky breath. "You're right. I just don't want to keep fighting." I squeezed her hand. "No one does. Let's go sit in the backyard where it's peaceful. We'll breathe some fresh air and think about how to move forward." We stepped outside together. The sun was still warm, the kids squealing with delight over a game of freeze tag they had started. Laughter floated through the air, contrasting sharply with the tension we had just left behind. David followed us, looking apologetic. He placed a gentle hand on Amanda's shoulder as we reached the patio table. I sat down with Amanda and motioned for David to sit across from us. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering a little, though the sun felt warm. "I'm still angry," she said, her voice soft. David took a deep breath. "I know. I was angry too. But not at you. At the stress of work and everything else. I lash out sometimes and I'm sorry." Amanda's eyes glistened. "I'm sorry for snapping. I told you to disappear and that was cruel. I didn't mean it." He blinked and swallowed hard. "When you told me to disappear, I felt like you didn't want me here. It hurt. But your words came from a place of frustration, not hate." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks again. He reached out and held her hand across the table. She squeezed it, and for a moment the tension between them eased. I watched them quietly. My heart ached, but I was thankful that at least they were speaking honestly. I realized that beneath the anger they both cared deeply for each other. I couldn't help but remember my own fights with my ex-husband all those years ago before we decided to part ways. I remembered how destructive silence can be, how letting resentment fester only makes matters worse. I thought about the importance of communication and how quickly love can be overshadowed by ego and pride. I decided to speak gently. You two are not perfect, but you love each other. That's what matters. Life will always throw stress and unexpected challenges your way. The key is letting each other know how you feel before it boils over. David nodded. You're right. I should have listened to you, Amanda. I should have asked how you felt. She took another sip of iced tea and wiped her eyes. And I should have known better than to lash out. I felt overwhelmed and let it get the best of me. I smiled, feeling the tension dissipate. See? We're all human. Now, how about we get this party back on track? Lily is waiting for her cake, and I think she's ready to blow out her candles. David looked at Amanda with a tentative smile. Let's go. She stood, brushing her hair back. Okay. Together they walked to the patio table where the cake sat waiting. I followed them, heart pounding with relief. I grabbed the lighter and lit the 7 candles on the cake, stepping back so they could hover near the table. The guests gathered, around unaware of the drama that had just unfolded. I nodded at a friend who gave me a sympathetic look. As though sensing the shift in atmosphere, Lily hopped up onto a chair and grinned broadly, completely oblivious to the earlier tension. Her excitement was contagious. Amanda crouched beside her, placing a gentle hand on her daughter's back. David stood behind Lily. Happy birthday, kiddo, he whispered into her ear. She beamed and took a deep breath, blowing out the candles in one go. Everyone cheered and clapped. The moment was bright and pure. I felt tears of pride and relief rise in my eyes. I knew that no matter how intense the fight had been, these were the moments worth cherishing. The rest of the afternoon carried on, smoothly. The children devoured cake, opening presents with shrieks of delight. I watched as my granddaughter hugged her new doll, her eyes sparkling with joy. Noah zoomed his toy truck across the deck, making engine noises and laughing when it crashed into a chair. Amanda and David stood side by side, greeting guests, handing out burgers and hot dogs, exchanging warm smiles. I slipped away briefly to refill my iced tea and took a moment on the back steps to breathe deeply and reflect. I realized that conflicts are inevitable when people care deeply for one another. Sometimes the ones you love the most can wound you with words, but that doesn't erase the love underneath. It takes courage to admit wrongs, to apologize, to forgive. I thought about the vase that lay in pieces earlier and how such a small object had nearly overshadowed the joy we were meant to share today. Material things can be replaced. Relationships once shattered are harder to mend, but not impossible. Watching Amanda and David navigate their emotions had reminded me how resilient love can be. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, guests began to say their goodbyes. The children retreated inside for a movie and popcorn, exhausted from their day of excitement. My sister offered to help clean up, and I accepted gratefully. I rinsed plates in the kitchen while she packed away the empty bowls of potato salad. Outside, music played softly, and the scent of the freshly watered lawn drifted through the open window. I felt at peace, grateful that the worst was behind us. When everyone had left and the house was quiet again, I found Amanda in the living room. She was picking up stray toys and folding blankets. She looked up as I entered. "Can I give you a hug?" she asked, her voice gentle. I nodded and embraced her. She felt warm and soft against me, and I ruffled her hair affectionately. "You did well today," I said. "You two worked through it." She sighed and leaned into me. I was so scared we would never get past that fight. It felt like everything was falling apart. I stroked her back. But it didn't. You both chose love and communication over pride. That's what matters. She pulled back and gave me a small smile. "Thanks, Mom. I needed to hear that." I squeezed her arm. Whenever you need me, I'm here. By the time I went upstairs to pack my things, the house felt calm and warm, as if the earlier storm had brought everyone closer together. I kissed my father goodnight and headed downstairs to say goodbye to my son and daughter-in-law. They stood at the door, waving as I walked down the walkway, the porch light casting a soft glow on their faces. "Thank you for coming, Mom," David said, his voice sincere. I nodded. "Any time," Amanda added. "Thank you for being there." I smiled. Family is family. No matter what happens, that won't change. As I drove home under the purple-tinged sky, I thought about how quickly anger and frustration can flare up, turning a celebration into something dark. But I also thought about the power of love and forgiveness to bring people back together. I felt grateful that despite the harsh words that had been spoken, words like, "Why don't you just disappear?" my family had survived the test. Realized that sometimes it takes a moment of crisis to reveal how strong our bonds really are. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for a moment. The house was silent, and the cool evening breeze carried the scent of jasmine from my garden. I let out a long breath, feeling a mix of exhaustion and gratitude. I thought about tomorrow, about the chores I still needed to do and the errands on my list. But more importantly, I thought about the conversations that needed to happen, the apologies to be made, and the love that needed to be reaffirmed. I resolved to call Amanda in the morning just to check in and remind her that I was proud of her and that she was valued. And I planned to take David out for coffee next week to talk about how he was, feeling with his job and his family, and to offer any support I could. As I stepped into the house, I felt a sense of closure. Today had shown me that no relationship is perfect and every family has its breaking points. But it also showed me that when people are willing to be vulnerable, to speak honestly, and to forgive, the bonds that tie them together only grow stronger. I climbed the stairs, paused at my bedroom door, and whispered a silent prayer of thanks for the gift of imperfection, for the lessons learned, and for the promise of new beginnings. And with that, I turned on the lamp and fell asleep, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring.